Islamophobia. What is it? The most commonly used definition and one that I ascribe to.
Wait, did you just say most commonly used definition? Oh, I see. It's because it's a new word. Well, actually, I found one definition in the Oxford Living Dictionary. It's defined here as a dislike of or prejudice against Islam or Muslims, especially as a political force. Furthermore, what do you mean by ascribe to? Do you mean subscribe to? As in to express or feel agreement with an idea or proposal? As opposed to ascribe, which means to attribute something to? As in a cause? As in your definition of Islamophobia, I ascribe to ignorance. Also, you cannot just subscribe or unsubscribe from words and definitions that you like or dislike. This is Canadian politics, not a YouTube community. Before I let Miss Khalid continue, I'd just like to point out one thing. She has a degree in professional writing. So either she never went to class, she's ignoring the proper use of words, or she's ignorantly or purposefully misleading the public.
Is that Islamophobia is the irrational hate of Muslims that leads to discrimination.
Stop, wait, can you give me that definition one more time?
Islamophobia is the irrational hate of Muslims that leads to discrimination.
Oh, that's not the definition the internet gods bestowed me, but you know what, let's check this again. Initial definition doesn't match up. Going to defining Islamophobia, it says here, unfounded hostility towards Muslims and therefore fear or dislike of all or most Muslims. It doesn't say hate on this one, which is weird because this is usually Berkeley. This is the people that riot when a dangerous faggot comes to town. Living Dictionary, we've seen that one. Wikipedia, fear, prejudice, hatred. We got hatred or dislike against Islam or Muslims or towards Islamic politics or culture. Some commenters have postulated an increase to Islamophobia resulting from 9/11. What was 9? Oh yeah, 9/11. Yeah, that's just get out of there. There are societies where virtually no Muslims live, but many institutionalized forms of Islamophobia still exist in them. That's interesting. It's like they are afraid of Islam without meeting any people. Like the people have nothing to do with it. It's almost as if the politics and culture. But let's go to this link. The link doesn't have a title, so I'm going to have to Google this. But here, it looks like it's probably this book here. Ooh, Sexualizing the War on Terror. These colonial figurations have a profound effect on the past and contemporary queer imagery. In early Zionist cinema, for example, Jewish settlement was often imagined through sexual encounters of masculine Jewish colonizers with homo-passive feminized Arab men. Militarizing the national self and homosexing the enemy received a new twist during gay claims of citizenship in the 1990s, when Israeli gay men envisioned the Israeli Defense Forces as a site where they could prove their national belonging through military violence. Let's prove that we too can serve elite infantry and shoot Arabs between the eyes. Okay, well, I don't think this is what we're looking for. What is Islamophobia? Islamophobia defined. Islamophobia is prejudice towards or discrimination against Muslims due to their religion or perceived religious, national, or ethnic identity associated with Islam. Like anti-Semitism, racism, and homophobia, Islamophobia describes mentalities and actions that demean an entire class of people. Jews, African Americans, and other populations throughout history have faced prejudice and discrimination. Islamophobia is simply another reincarnation of this unfortunate trend of bigotry. What Islamophobia isn't. Rational criticism of Islam or Muslims based on factual evidence is not intrinsically Islamophobic, just as criticism of tenets or followers of any religion or ethnic group does not necessarily indicate bigotry or prejudice. Dictionary.com says Islamophobia is a hatred, hatred or fear of Muslims or of their politics or culture. International Business Times published a paper that provided stats that said 55% of those surveyed held an unfavorable opinion of Islam. The same poll found that the majority of respondents also had limited contact with Muslims, with 74% of respondents saying they didn't work with someone who was Muslim, and 68% saying they did not have any Muslim friends. This does not mean that those who have an unfavorable opinion of Islam don't like Islamic people. They don't even know Islamic people. They don't like the practice, culture, or law of Islam. Oh, here we go. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary. The Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines Islamophobia as an irrational fear of, aversion to, or discrimination against Islam or the people who practice Islam. Doesn't say irrational hate, though, so I guess we're going to have to keep looking. HarperCollins' definition of Islamophobia is hatred or fear of Muslims or of their politics or culture. I think Sam Harris put the definition of Islamophobia the best, however, when he said, Islamophobia, a word created by fascists and used by cowards to manipulate morons.
Islamophobia is the irrational hate.
Also, you say irrational hate, but if it's irrational, then by definition, it is without the faculty of reason, deprived of reason, without or deprived of normal mental clarity or sound judgment, not in accordance with reason, utterly illogical, not endowed with the faculty of reason. So if it's an irrational fear of something, then it must be a phobia. But what is a phobia? Well, a phobia is an excessive and irrational fear reaction. If you have a phobia, you may experience a deep sense of dread or panic when you encounter the source of your fear. Such things include spiders, balloons, going outside, being inside a tight space, clowns, computers, electricity, air, water. These are irrational fears that people cannot control. An estimated 19 million people have phobias that cause difficulties in some areas of their lives. The impact of a phobia can range from annoying to severely disabling. People with a phobia often realize their fear is irrational, but they're unable to do anything about it. So if someone has Islamophobia and it's an actual fear causing irrational fear, unthought about fear that just creeps up on them and they cannot control it and it is disabling to them. If someone is suffering from Islamophobia, they know that there's no reason to be afraid. It's just a phobia, but there's nothing they can do about it. But if someone truly hated something, this is where my issue with irrational comes up. How can it be an irrational hate? How can you hate something, as in you've put in the effort to dislike it so much that you would stand against it and fight it and hate against it, and irrationally never think about it? And if it is an irrational hatred, how can you punish someone for being afraid of something they cannot control? Clearly, if there's hatred of Islam involved, it is a rational hatred. But here I've gathered a list of phobias. Here are some psychological conditions. These are the ones that are actually psychological conditions, ones that you will see in a DSM or actually treated in a mental facility. And if we just go through this list here, Islamophobia, that's an I, that's E, F, G, H. Scroll up to the I's here. And, what we find is that there's only one definition under the I's. It's a fear of fish, actually. We're eating fish. Fear of dead fish. I might have that phobia. But maybe there's a Muslim phobia. No, it's not in there either. Non-psychological conditions, no. Biological chemistry, no. Oh, here we go. Racist and xenophobic sentiments. Sentiments, mind you. These phobias. Look, Islamophobia is right there in the middle, right between the fear of Jews and the fear of Germans and the fear of Christians and the fear of Turks and Russians, Koreans. So this sentiment goes along with all the other sentiments of hating or fearing some culture. Here's a different phobia list I found. Just quickly jump down to the I's. And again, this list of clinical phobias does not mention Islamophobia. So if Islamophobia is actually just a sentiment and not an actual phobia, and that sentiment is still a dislike towards Muslims or to the Islamic people, culture, or politics, maybe there's some reason for this. Maybe there's some logic. Maybe it's rational hatred. Maybe it's rational dislike rather than irrational. So why don't we cut the bull and go straight to the source? Let's go straight to the Quran and let's just look up some reasons why a non-believer might fear the Quran. So just putting non-believer into the search engine. Let's see, the first result here is, let no man guilty of adultery or fornication marry, and but a woman similarly guilty, or an unbeliever, nor let any but such a man, or an unbeliever, marry such a woman. To the believers, such a thing is forbidden. That's not too bad. Just let the unbelievers marry the sluts. I'm okay with that. Do not marry unbelieving women until they believe. A slave woman who believes is better than an unbelieving woman. even though she allures you, nor marrying your girls to unbelievers until they believe. A manslave who believes is better than an unbeliever, even though he allures you. Unbelievers do but beckon to the fire. These it is that are truly unbelievers, and we have prepared for the unbelievers a disgraceful chastisement. The other translation reads, they are in truth equally unbelievers, and we have prepared for unbelievers a humiliating punishment. But this is just the Quran. It's only the law and the constitution of Islam. It's only 100% true to those that believe it. And it only tells them to go and kill everyone that's not them. But you know, that's not what Islam is. Let's Google Islam. And when we Google Islam, look how peaceful it is. There's just sunsets and calm prayers, and those people are kicking out someone with a rifle. Don't look at that. We're not looking at that part. Some lovely churches, some nice writing. Seems very peaceful. This is definitely what she's talking about, right? The only issue is when you Google Islam, you get all these peaceful pictures. But if you put in the word reality right after that, the images change drastically. Look, all of a sudden there's people wanting people's heads, just terrorists in the street, free speech being killed, comic, sad reality. There are places in this world where women are paid for stripping and fined for doing hijab. Isn't it sad how in some places of the world women can choose their own employment and get paid for it, whereas in other parts of the world they're oppressed? Ooh, I like this one. Percentage of militants shown in U.S. military, 57%. Actual number of militants in the Muslim community, 1%. The interesting thing about this statistic, even if this was true, which it's not, is that 1% of 1.6 billion, that would be 16 million people. 16 million people. The results are a lot more interesting when you put in the words like reality, or you know what's really peaceful in a free society? Protest. Let's go. Islam and protest. That should be peaceful. Let's see what we got here. Behead those who insult Islam. Islam will dominate the world. Right next to no room for racists. Oh, don't they look like happy fellas? America, get off of Muslim lands. Muslim lands? This must be in like Syria or something. Oh, no, Grosvenor Square, London, England. I don't think that's Muslim land. I'm pretty sure that's English land. In summary, the mover lied about the definition of Islamophobia. The mover wants to punish mental illness, or is lying that it is a phobia, purposefully or ignorantly misuses words with a professional writing degree, and doesn't know the difference between irrational and rational hate of a culture that will behead you for drawing their profit. Any last words, Ms. Khalid?
There are certainly a small and unfortunately growing number of individuals who are driven by dark motivations to commit acts of violence or even murder to silence or marginalize Canadians who ascribe to certain beliefs and values.